Your verdict. Give us the answer.
Well, I'm now 87, so it's difficult to recall so many things of that time. But I distinctly recall that Shikarpur was one of the great cities of India. It's at the trade route between India and the countries of Afghanistan and even the countries of Iran and other, particularly through Quetta and Chaman, the city of Zaidan, which was the other outpost outside India. The people of this country, of this city, were people who carried on mainly banking business outside Shikarpur, but in southern India.
Okay.
Extremely rich people who stayed almost 9 months out of the year outside and then came back to Shikarpur for 3 months to spend their money. It was supposed to be a paradise for eaters, because it provided the best possible food. And I remember that a very famous place in the Shikarpur city, it's called the Lakidar. All kinds of shops and particularly eating places. And there used to be a fellow who used to sell kulfis and ice creams. And I remember, and that chap migrated after partition to Bombay, and he's somewhere here in Bombay making tons of money. And his name used to be Moti's shop. And if you could easily spend about 1 anna on a kulfi, and you didn't have appetite for the rest of the day. It was so rich, and that's how things were cheap. I believe that even in the upper middle class families, the ladies of the house used to receive about 10 rupees a month per head, and the living was so comfortable. Another thing which I recall is that at that time the Indian rupee was divided into 16 annas, and the 16 annas were divided into 4 paisas each, which means 64, and then each paisa was divided into 3 pies. And not only that, every single pie was worth 5 kodis, those shells that you find, at the on the sea beach or wherever. And the kodis were current coin. You could take 5 kodis and buy something out of it. In 1 paisa, you used to get a fairly big size bread with liver, with mince, with delicious gravy, chutney and onions. You could make a meal. And the greatest beauty of that city, I remember, was the flowing canal, which used to call the Sindh, in which the water used to start flowing from the Indus River. And for about 3 months, used to be water flowing through that canal. And on both sides of that canal were the bungalows of rich people. Bungalows which contained swimming pools and ponds and invariably a bullock-driven, well-operated, get plenty of water from the well, which will get into the either the pool or the ponds or the swimming bathing places. And people used to go upstream for about 2 miles, 3 miles, depending on how much water you have, how time you have. And then they will get into the current, coming back down from where they started. And food, mangoes in earthenware pots used to float along with the swimmer, and including, of course, some local wine. And then by evening time, you ended up from where you started, depending on how far you have gone. And then you would get into one of those rich people's bungalows on either side. And you will go down into the well water, and there were niches built there where you could sit, and the food was sent to you in a basket. I have never seen anything of that kind in any part of the world, and I have traveled in the whole world. I mean, I still remember the Sindh Shikarpur, which was the greatest luxury that I have enjoyed until the time that I left Sindh.
You were known as something of a child prodigy.
Well, I had promotions and things like that. I was a good student, let me say that. When I was in the third standard English, I got prizes, and school used to perform in big functions, and other school teachers and principals were invited. And I remember that I was put up on the stage, and they said, you ask him any questions in Mughal history. And I was supposed to answer these questions in English. And I did such a remarkable job. People threw currency notes, and some rich people threw gold guineas. So I had a lovely time. And my father was a practicing lawyer. My grandfather was a lawyer. My grandfather was the president of the municipality sometime. So we had a nice, lovely time. And then I passed my LLB at the age of 17. And the rules of the local bar council required that you have to be 21 years of age. So I applied to the Chief Justice that this rule should not apply to me, because when I joined the law college, this rule didn't exist. And so the Chief Justice told the Bar Council to amend their rules and at least make room for some exceptions, so that the rule of 21 became subject to possible exceptions. Then when the LLB result was announced, I had got a first class first in the Bombay University. We had no university of our own. So we were all parts of that sprawling Bombay University, which consisted of the whole of Maharashtra, the whole of Gujarat, part of Karnataka, and the whole of Sindh. So in that sprawling university, I had a first class first. And so the Bar Council was compelled to make an exception in my case, and I started, but they told me to wait for 1 year to become a major. They say your contracts are void. How can you enter into any contract with your client? So I started my practice exactly when I completed my 18th year.
You had a practice in Sindh, and you were also from a family of lawyers who practiced in that area. Are there peculiarities of the legal tradition of that area which you would like to recount?
Well, I must tell you that Sindh had, particularly Karachi, had some very, very great lawyers who, if they were practicing, for example, in Bombay and Delhi, would have been probably at the top. One great thing that I remember is that the great Mr. Jinnah came 3 times to Karachi. He was engaged in some matters to appear for some clients. He never won a case in Sindh. Even all 3 times he lost the case. And you must know something more about Mr. Jinnah. When Jinnah qualified for the bar, he came to Karachi to practice. Because Karachi had a community called the Khojas, and Jinnah belonged to that community, and he expected that if he starts practice there, he will get a good ready-made clientele, and they were all merchants and rich merchants. So he went to a firm of Hindu lawyers called Harchandra and Company. So the old Harchandra had interviewed him and said, Mr. Jinnah, you are perfectly qualified, join. I'll certainly take you in my office. Then they had to settle the terms. And Mr. Jinnah asked for 100 rupees a month. And that old Hindu miser would not go beyond 75. And the talks failed. So I have always been saying, I have said it in public meeting here when Mr. Jaswant Singh's book on Jinnah was being released. I said, listen, Jinnah was not the cause of India's partition. The cause of India's partition was that old Hindu miser. If he had paid 25 rupees more, India would not have been partitioned. So this is Mr. Jinnah's connection with Sindh. And then, Jinnah was so disgusted with his losing matters in Sindh. Ultimately, there was a Khan Bahadur Khoro, who was a Muslim League leader and a very powerful leader in Sindh. So he was accused of murder. And naturally, he turned to Mr. Jinnah to come and defend him. So Mr. Jinnah said, I won't come. He refused to come. I hope you will succeed, but I will not come. I think he had realized that in Sindh he is not going to win a case. That's it. And another great thing about Sindh you must know, and I would like other people to know. Sindh was the cradle of Sufism. Sufism is the gentlest form of Islam. It has tremendous resemblance with the Kashmiriyat of Kashmir. In fact, according to me, both are synonyms. Sindh produced one of the greatest poets. Of course, he wrote in Sindhi, but it is the opinion of experts that he was superior to Tagore and Shakespeare combined. His name was Shah Abdul Latif. We had developed such great synthesis between the two communities that as a Hindu youngster, I used to get my new clothes on Eid day, and Muslim boys used to get their clothes on Deepavali day. Even when the partition took place and lakhs of people were killed in Punjab and other places, the Sindhi Muslim never killed a single Hindu. In fact, speaking for myself, for the sake of safety, I had brought my family to Bombay and left them there. But I had gone back alone, and I was practicing there on the day of partition or thereafter, in the hope that this madness will come to an end very soon and things will become normal. So I stayed there till February 1948. But by that time, a large number of Muslims had come from Bihar and other places to Sindh. And they were the cause of a great tension and trouble because they wanted Hindu properties. So in February, one day, when I was arguing a case in a magistrate's court, my Pathan Victoria driver walked in and said, "Sir, you are arguing cases here and something like a fire is starting in Karachi, and the locality where you are living is in danger." So I got into his car and I wore a Jinnah cap. Nobody touched me on the way. And I found that nobody was really being hurt physically. But they had made preparations to rob all the shops and take away all property of the Hindus and strike a feeling of fear so that they should migrate. That is exactly what happened. After that period, some 15 days, curfew was on, and when the curfew was lifted, I decided to come to India. Incidentally, I was practicing law there for nearly 6 years by that time. And my partner was another gentleman by the name of Mr. Brohi, Alabaksh Brohi, a Muslim guy, but a great scholar and a very secular Muslim. And we were like two brothers. He was, of course, 7 years older than me in age. And he, seeing the incidents of February 48, and he told me, he said, Ram, I'm sorry, I now can't bear the responsibility of your safety. And then I left. And since most of the Hindu lawyers had left Karachi and Sindh, Mr. Brohi became the top lawyer. He became a member of the Pakistan Parliament. And you know that they celebrate 23rd March as the Pakistan Day. Pakistanis celebrate that. That's the day on which the first constitution of independent Pakistan came into force. That constitution was piloted through the Pakistan Parliament by my ex-partner but continuing great friend, Mr. Brohi, who by that time was one of the best lawyers in Karachi. So I settled down in Karachi, in Bombay, where I started my practice, and with good bit of opposition which I encountered. I have made good, and frankly today my attitude is that I owe everything to the help and generosity of the people of India, and I have to return to them some date before I die. That's my philosophy. So I think I've told you more than you expected.
When you started out practice in Bombay, who were your contemporaries? Who did you look up to at that time?
Well, amongst the youngsters, Palkiwala was one. He was a couple of years senior to me in age, but not very much senior to me in the profession, because I had, started much earlier in life. He was a bit of a prodigy and a very, very successful junior. Of course, later on I came to know his great hold over economics when he used to make his annual budget speeches. And that I realized long after when I attended one of his budget lectures at the Cricket Club of India. That was the place where he used to deliver lectures. Then there was Mr. Chandrachud, who later on became the Chief Justice of India. Lulla brothers, Sri Krishnadas Lulla and Balkrishnan Lulla, very great lawyers, one on the civil side, another on the criminal side. There used to be Mr. Abdul Rahman, I believe, the grandfather of this lady who is now the minister in the PPP government in Pakistan. What is her name? I forget her name. Sherry Rahman.
Okay.
Sherry Rahman, that's her name. She's a very charming young lady and a very clever woman. And she's Abdul Rahman's granddaughter. And the daughter of Mr. Hassan Ali was my friend and colleague. So these are some of the names that I can easily recall.
Okay, so coming to the 1960s, you led the prosecution in the Nanavati trial. Tell us about your involvement in criminal law, how you entered criminal law.
I entered criminal law from the very first day of my life in Karachi. And I never specialized in criminal law.
Yes.
The only thing is that a criminal case attracts great public attention because people get involved in the criminal history of other people. And from a lawyer's point of view, when you argue a great point of constitutional law or simple law and make an intellectual success, that's a greater achievement than arguing a very celebrated murder case or a celebrated case of. So, my father was a criminal lawyer, my grandfather was a criminal lawyer. So I have no difficulty in saying that I gravitated to the criminal side right from the beginning, and it was in my genes. And I did get involved in some very important cases right in the beginning of my career in Bombay. One of my friends who had got some very important clients in some important dacoity cases, like at the Mahalakshmi Temple dacoity, the bank dacoity case. He was taken up in the administrative service. So he told me that, "Hey, Ram, you do my work because I have taken fees from these people. Now I have no money to refund to them. You will do these cases free." I said, "I'll certainly do these cases free for you. Don't worry about it." I had argued those cases and I became a famous jury lawyer. In those days we used to have trial by jury, which we abolished in the late, I think, early 60s or late 50s, I forget. Now we abolished jury trial, but I became a famous jury trial lawyer. So I have never looked back.
If you had to tell the story of jury trials, how you prepared for jury trials to the lawyers of today?
Well, you see, to argue a case before a jury is a much different kettle of fish than arguing before a judge. There your eloquence, your oratory, your dramatics, your understanding of human nature and the layman's mind. This is something which you pick up by seeing great masters. You don't learn it in a classroom. And fortunately today, the Indian lawyer doesn't have to face a jury trial, so today it is a little meaningless. But I believe that same thing, to some extent, is a great asset even when you are appearing before a judge. After all, a judge is also, in a sense, a juror, except that he thinks he is not, but he is in some sense. So, but the heart of success in the legal profession is industry. It is meant for people who work hard and are capable of putting that kind of work. You will be surprised, one of the greatest jury lawyers of India in those days used to be Asaf Ali. Asaf Ali was the husband of this socialist leader, Aruna Asaf Ali. Aruna, the husband. A great lawyer. And I saw him in action in Karachi when I was young. He came to defend some Dr. Abbasi was supposed to have killed a Boer with whom he had some homosexual relations. It was a very great trial, attracted a lot of public attention, and I used to attend that. So Asaf Ali, when he qualified, was one of the stories which he used to tell us. He went to the famous firm of Frederick Pollock and Muller in London and tried to join that firm. So he was interviewed, and the old man there asked him, he said, "Mr. Asaf Ali, please tell me how many hours of work can you put in?" So poor Asaf Ali tried to strain the truth as much as he could. And he said, "Sir, I couldn't put in at least about 10-12 hours every day." And so he looked at him like that. He said, "Listen, Mr. Asaf Ali, I'm the oldest member of this firm. I'm thrice your age. I put in 22 hours sometimes." But they gave him a job. But the job that they gave him was that we receive most of our litigation in the Privy Council from the state of Tamil Nadu, in those days Madras. And the names of these clients are jaw-breaking. So you better decipher these names for us and tell us the spellings and the pronunciation of their names. So that's the first job that he got, and he took it. And then you see, ultimately he rose to be a great lawyer, a great politician, and a great success. There's no question about it. And he was one of the most eloquent, and he was a great cross-examiner. And I tell the legal profession that the art of cross-examination is dead. The trials hardly take place. And the trials take place, now that you don't have a jury trial, the trials don't go on every day continuously. You have one hearing today, you have another hearing after 3 months, and the trials go on for years and years. So that cross-examination no longer exists, and justice does not depend merely on law. It depends on facts. And unfortunately, in this country, people lie a little more frequently than in other countries, at least in the countries in the West. And you have to extract truth from very unwilling, reluctant witnesses. Be sure that when a witness swears, "I'll speak the truth, nothing but the truth, the whole truth," you can by a look at him know that the rascal has come to speak a walloping lie. And to get the truth out of him is a great art, and that itself requires great introspection and industry, which doesn't exist today at the bar. And all these young lawyers who start practice directly in the Supreme Court, they have never done a single trial in their life. So the profession is not in that kind of a trim shape as it should be. It's very bad shape.
Well, sir. Another facet of criminal trials, as you pointed out, is the media attention. As an officer of the court, how do you insulate yourself from media attention, also public opinion?
You see, you don't have to isolate yourself from public opinion, but do not allow what your conscience wants you to do and you are required to do according to your understanding of professional obligations. Don't be influenced by adverse public criticism. Otherwise, I'm also in politics, so I can't be totally insensitive to public opinion. I should be a very foolish politician if I don't take care of that. But the media is becoming terribly invasive, intrusive, and I regret to say that there are cases of perversion of justice, miscarriage of justice, purely because of press action. And in legal theory, they say it is juries who are influenced by media. The judges are not, but it's a fallacy, biggest fallacy. The judges are as human as any juror can be, and however well trained they are, be sure that they are influenced by the press. And I don't believe that the press is doing a great job in reporting cases. They become partisan, they sometimes become almost mean and cruel, which ought to be avoided. There have been terrible miscarriages of justice because of the influence of the press. Otherwise, a lawyer should also like to be on the right side of the press. The press gives him publicity, it advances him in his profession. And don't tell me that the press doesn't do that. They do it. They do it for some consideration, don't they?
The flip side of the question, sir, is personal conviction. Recently, Mr. Nariman, he regretted his, taking the case of Bhopal. How important is personal conviction for a lawyer while accepting a brief. You are known to have taken several unpopular causes.
Look, once you take up a cause, you must do your best for your client. But doing the best for your client means doing everything which is legitimate. You secure a good result, but by means which are totally moral and fair. So long as you recognize that you have duties to the client, all right, but these duties coexist with some duties which you owe as an officer of the court to the court. As a member of the public, you owe duties to public interest and public justice. You also owe duties to your opponent. One of the rules of the profession is, for example, that a lawyer is bound to fulfill promises which may not be legally enforceable. Because you are a gentleman. Your word should be as good as a bond. Your bond should be as good as a banknote. So once you recognize these obligations, that doing the best for the client does not mean forgetting everything else. Now, for example, your client tells you that I have committed this offense. That doesn't give you a reason for refusing to defend him. People ask that question, that why? Why does a lawyer have to defend a person who tells him that I am guilty? The reason that a lawyer can very legitimately advance is that it is society which has made a rule that nobody should be convicted or punished without adequate convincing evidence. When you argue a case for a person who has told you in private that he has committed the offense, what you are telling the court is not, you are not swearing on oath that I know that my client is innocent. You don't have to do anything of that, and that's professional misconduct. What you are telling the court is that the evidence on which my client is being convicted does not satisfy the standard which you have laid down for everybody. You point out the defects in the evidence and leave it to the judge to decide. But we have an express rule of professional conduct and etiquette. Incidentally, these rules were made by the Bar Council of India when I was the chairman of the bar. We have an express rule which says that no advocate shall refuse to defend an accused who is standing his trial on the ground that the defense will bring him unpopularity or some personal inconvenience, or that it believes him to be guilty. It's an express rule in so many words. We have a rule which is especially applicable to those who are in charge of prosecutions, which says that a lawyer appearing for the prosecution in a criminal case must so conduct the case that it doesn't lead to the conviction of the innocent, and that it is his duty to disclose to the other side everything which helps that side to establish his innocence. Now, these are great ethical rules which I don't know how many lawyers follow. I regret to say that in my opinion most of them don't. But with these rules, there is the greatness of the profession. That's why you call it a noble and a very high-minded profession. The very fact that you call it a profession, you are putting yourself in a class separate from a trader or a businessman. A businessman can advertise. He wants to increase his business. He can create business. A lawyer can't advertise. A lawyer can't foment litigation to be able to get a fee and earn money out of it. It's the first duty of a lawyer is to prevent people from going to court. We have an express rule against a lawyer fomenting litigation. Just because you are an honorable member of society, and what is lawful for lesser mortals may not be lawful for you. You know, in 1965, there was a Commonwealth lawyers meeting in organized by the Australian Bar in Sydney. The function was inaugurated by the Prime Minister of Australia at that time, Sir Robert Menzies, who had been a distinguished Attorney General of Australia before he became a Prime Minister. So he told the assembled lawyers from all over the Commonwealth that, ladies and gentlemen, I am a member of, I'm a head of the Australian government, but I can tell you that I am able to properly discharge my duties as a Prime Minister because I have a sufficiently large number of lawyers who are members of the Parliament, both in the ruling party and in the opposition. And then he went on to add that if this number goes down below a certain number which I have in mind, I am afraid I won't be able to remain Prime Minister of this country. And that was a great tribute which was paid by a lawyer statesman to his fellow lawyers. And today you see the kind of joke books that exist about lawyers, satiring lawyers, attacking lawyers, showing them as creators of troubles. And I don't know whether you've heard the latest, the pharmaceutical laboratories in the United States have taken a decision that in their scientific experiments in their laboratories, research laboratories, they will stop using rats, they will use lawyers instead. So they gave reasons, 3 reasons for this decision of theirs. The first reason was that lawyers are more numerous than rats. And the second reason was that it's difficult to fall in love with lawyers, as occasionally we fall in love with our rats. And the third reason was that there are certain things which lawyers do which even rats will not do. So that's the degradation of the profession through which we are going now, and it is for the younger generation to bring back the profession to its old glory, which it once upon a time enjoyed.
The profession had a great responsibility during the emergency. You had a warrant issued against you, and a great part of the profession in Bombay stood by you during that time. Would you like to recount those days?
Oh yes, certainly the Bombay Bar did stand by me. But also remember that when I left India, on the day the Supreme Court pronounced that notorious judgment, they let us down, let Indian democracy down, they betrayed the constitution, their obligation. The day I left, we had a meeting at Mr. Palkiwala's place. And I told them, I said, listen, I'm quite prepared to go to jail tomorrow, you ask me. But there are 101 lawyers undergoing imprisonment in the Nasik jail alone. And I'm quite prepared to become the 102nd lawyer, but I don't want to sort of shirk the idea of going to jail. But if I am outside India, be sure that I will be able to carry on propaganda, what has happened in to Indian democracy and how it's a fake emergency, which I was the chairman of the bar at that time. And it was decided that I must leave. And I left that very night, and no less a person than the Commissioner of Police escorted me to the plane. I was not a criminal lawyer in vain. So I went out, and I am the only Indian who got political asylum in the United States. I taught law in the United States. Then I returned only when the emergency was gone. But while I was teaching, I was most of the time going around the country and informing the people how Indian democracy had been betrayed. And Mrs. Gandhi at that time was shopping for so many things in the United States. She needed money, and the American government, I think at that time it was, I don't know whether it was Carter or somebody, but anyway, the American government made it very plain that so long as you have this emergency going in India, you will not get a single dollar. So ultimately she had to yield. That was one of the reasons. The second reason was that she was surrounded by flatterers. They all told her that you are a queen, you have got a settled place in the hearts of the people of the country, and you just fight the election and you will be returned to power. Why are you bothered about it? And she was wrong, and they were wrong, the advisors.
Tell us a bit more about your practice during the emergency. The use of MISA, for example.
Sorry?
The use of MISA by the government.
Oh, well, you see, I'm a terrible opponent of this preventive detention without trial. I mean, I grant that in some extreme cases during war or some situation which resembles war almost, maybe preventive detention is necessary. It may be necessary, for example, frankly, I'm not sure, with terrorists today. Because in a way, terrorists are more dangerous than an invading army. When you see an invading army, you kill it, you don't try them. So, possibly, it is justified in very, very grave situations, but not in the phony situation in which Mrs. Gandhi imprisoned all her political opponents, because, and see what has happened to that whole family. They used that MISA, gave it a lot of publicity, and you remember that when the MISA came into force, they arrested a few smugglers and paraded them through the streets. And I was the chairman of the bar at that time, and I wrote an article in which I said that I am not pleased, I am not amused. Be sure that soon enough this power of preventive detention will be used against political opponents. And that is exactly what Mrs. Gandhi did. And see the fate which ultimately overtook her. See the fate which overtook her two sons. But nobody realizes this, you see. Look at 14th November, yesterday's issue. How much money you spend on photographs of Pandit Nehru. Well, according to me, he is responsible for most of the problems which India is facing today. Critical faculties of even the students are gone. Even the law students and the practicing lawyers are gone. We have all become a nation of flatterers. Now that's a sad part of our profession.
As your time as chairman of the Bar Council of India.
Well, chairman, I've been a chairman for nearly 4 or 5 terms at a stretch. I was the chairman on the day I left India during the emergency. Then when I returned, I again resumed the chairmanship of the Bar Council. Today I am, of course, the president of the Supreme Court Bar Association since May. So I still enjoy the support and affection of the bar. I hope when I'm gone, some people will say that he did something good for the bar and the country. So I'll do my best.
In your opinion, what's the relevance of bar associations today? What can they do?
Well, they can do a lot. First of all, according to me, it is the duty of lawyers, first and foremost, particularly the senior lawyers, to assist in putting worthy people on the bench. They must be able to make recommendations of people who they think are really fit to be on the bench. Because a practicing lawyer is in a position to know the character, integrity and reputation of a lawyer who is seeking promotion to the bench. No other person is in that position. I mean, this kind of a right should be exercised by those who don't have their own son or cousin or wife or daughter to promote and put on the bench. And then the bar associations can discipline the morals and behavior of their own members. They must become whistleblowers against the black sheep. And that is a very unpopular thing to do, but you have to do it, and somebody has got to do it, and that's the role of the bar association. And most of the appointments in England are made by the Lord Chancellor. So the Lord Chancellor was asked at the Lord Chancellor, the judges of the House of Lords and judges, they meet the members of the bar at the bar dinners, and they go to the bar rooms and have lunch. So the Lord Chancellor of England, I forget the name, who was asked, he says, "Sir, but how do you consistently make such good appointments?" So his answer was that, listen, if I don't make good appointments, can I at this lunch table look you straight in the eye? This is the sensitiveness of people, their own conscience. And here, even Dinakaran was about to be appointed. And if we had not protested, he would have been there, and he is now the Chief Justice of some state, isn't he?
Sikkim.
Sikkim. So
You've been a vocal opponent of the method of
why
appointments.
do the people of Sikkim deserve him? I don't know. So,
You've been a vocal opponent of the method of appointments to the higher judiciary.
absolutely. Both the methods which we have tried so far have failed. Now we should try a third. Maybe that even the third will not succeed, but it's time for trying it. And that's the creation of a National Judicial Commission, for which I have been writing, I have been telling Parliament to do it, I have been telling political parties to do it.
Tell us about standing for elections, sir. How does a lawyer such as yourself go through the rough and tumble of Indian politics?
Look, I have frankly, except the first two elections to the Lok Sabha, I don't think in the first election after the emergency I had any problem. I discovered in me a new faculty, that is of addressing public meetings and talking to large audiences and speaking about myself and politics in general. Even the second was, according to me, a very easy fight. But both times I was fighting against very important people. The first I fought against Mr. Gokhale. The second it was Mr. Ramarao Adik. And the third time when I lost was Sunil Dutt, I think. Sunil Dutt was the third time, last time. And after that I have been regularly a member of the Rajya Sabha. And mind you, I have been always an independent member of the Rajya Sabha, except in my 6th term now, that I have gone back to the BJP. I have not spent a pie on being elected to the Rajya Sabha. I don't think I spent money from my pocket in the first and the second Lok Sabha election either. People generously contributed, my friends and others. I had no problem. Maybe that I have had an easier life than many others. But that's just plain good luck.
You had trouble surviving in the cabinet system of government.
Not at all. Not at all. While I was there, I did my work. Nobody can say that I was corrupt. And those who disagreed with me and got me out, again after so many years, they have found me very, very useful. They have invited me back. I didn't go back to the BJP, they invited me to join them. In the meantime, I have had a very happy interlude doing better things with my friends at the bar. It's good enough.
Do you feel that certain changes need to be made to the cabinet system, or is it fine as it is?
This talk about systems is wholly misplaced. I mean, it has some relevance, but our problem is not the system. Our problem is the character of people who work that system. Our character has gone down so much. Look at what has happened today. Mr. Raja has been ultimately asked to go. This Prime Minister should have had the courage to do it long ago. That's why 2 weeks ago I wrote, I don't know whether you read my Sunday Standard, I wrote, Mr. Manmohan, what has happened to your conscience? You are surrounded by filth which you can see and smell, but you are doing nothing. So merely because you have the reputation of not receiving bribes doesn't mean anything. You are a conspirator if it is your duty to act and you don't act in removing the corrupt.
The responsibilities of the law minister.
No, he is the least important member of the cabinet. Not a poor law minister, what does he do? Sits and drafts opinions. If I was a practicing lawyer, I used to earn for it. Here I used to give free opinions to people. Not at all. The law minister, not a...
But anything significant during your tenure that you'd like to recount?
Well, when I was the Urban Development Minister, before the Right to Information Act, I opened up all my files.
Not a very popular move.
It was not a popular move amongst the bureaucrats,
Yeah.
but surely a popular move amongst the people. I've done that. I repealed the Land Sealing Act, which had become an instrument of corruption. Nothing but method of making money.
Badminton.
If you ask me, badminton in the morning and a couple of whiskies in the night.
What whiskey, sir? What whiskey?
Oh well, any scotch is better than no scotch. But my usual is black label.
Okay.
But you must know how to control your intake. If alcohol takes control of you, then you are a goner. And at my age, it is an elixir. And try it.
Let your verdict give us the answer.